The School of Dramatic Arts at USC is also joining the conversation about diversity. MFA students are performing Twilight, Los Angeles 1992, a play based on a series of interviews in the aftermath of the Rodney King riots. Take a look.
We go get our motherfucking justice. We tear this shit up. We bring it to them.
I just broke down crying because I was sure they were going to be guilty. The whole world saw that tape, which I thought was more than the evidence they needed, but I guess the truth doesn't matter, you know?
I knew, obviously, that some people were going to be upset by it, but I did not expect nearly what happened.
LA was like a war zone.
War zone.
War zone. Chaos.
LA was a shit show.
I understand people was angry.
As long as this country been taken from me and mine, you thought I wasn't gonna jump at the first opportunity to pay them up?
Christian Henley grew up in South Central LA and plays two characters in the performance. Thanks for being here, Christian.
Thank you for having me.
Tell us about the characters you portray and how you prepared for those roles.
Okay, so my first character's name is Keith Watson, followed by Paul Parker. And my first character, he comes from right around the area of Florence and Normandy. He grew up there. He was ex-military, involved in gang life. So for this kind of character and his portrayal and his activism in the Rodney King riots, in the Reginald Denny beating, he was one of the 4 assailants of Reginald Denny. Well, there were 6, but they called it the LA 4, and he was one of the big 4, as you would call it. And looking at different interviews from him, he was talking about how it was just the excitement and it was just the energy of what was happening. It's not his character. This is the same kind of guy. Like I said, he was a member of a gang, but he's also ex-military. And he was also the neighborhood watch, the leader, as his father was. So you look at a guy like that, and you would want to make the judgment, okay, what's his character? You can't really make a call. But hearing his words and the way he speaks and his actions, you can see that he was desperate to belong to something greater than himself. His entire life, he was looking to belong to something greater than himself. And so you find yourself in a situation, he even says, one of his lines in the play is, I mean, I'm up there with Martin and Malcolm. I'm talking about Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. And this was his act of even just, he just put his foot on Reginald Denny's neck, which is not condonable in any circumstance. But this is a guy who wants to do something for his people. And so that, I felt very fortunate in a sense to play him, because we're all, you can see that we're all trying to do something. We're all trying to speak, and maybe because of resource and accessibility to different things, we have to speak in different ways. And speaking in different ways, my second character, Paul Parker, is a black activist, educated, Ivy League educated, and he is actually the counsel defense for the LA 4. And he walked into a room in an African dashiki, and he can speak very eloquently, and he can go from the side of Keith Watson and then turn on the Ivy League educated Barack Obama kind of persona.
Okay, so what do you remember, if anything, from your childhood about that period?
Well, I was 2 years old.
Okay.
So I don't consciously remember anything. However, it does live in me, and I am, I think, not directly affected by it, but indirectly, given that my parents were both in the midst of it, my family was in the midst of it, and living right here in the area. Speaking with my mother and father about the times, they were completely terrified. My mother more so than my father. My father's a character, and no, he didn't participate in any riots or any looting, rather. But they were more so afraid of something that's not often talked about, is the black-on-black crime or the inter-turmoil between the same race. It's often blacks against the Koreans, or the Mexicans and the Koreans, but or whites. But there was a lot of infighting, and it was just a very scary time.
Yeah. So how have things changed, if at all, in South Central since the riots?
Well, I would say things have changed a lot in certain aspects, and some things have not changed at all. And it's a much larger conversation than South Central Los Angeles, because a lot of the things that govern and a lot of the rules that have been placed upon South Central are things that are superimposed from an exterior force. So South Central is going to be South Central. but every day I can see, and over the years, I've seen a push towards something different.
Yeah. And what new challenges do people in South Central face?
I think because of the times, and because of there's a seemingly a progression of how African Americans in general are doing in this country, the idea that there is no more excuses, or the idea that we're doing it to ourselves in a sense, I think is a conversation that's gaining more popularity, and which is just, I think, much more detrimental to our community. Because when you look at, there's so many things, South Central being a lot of food deserts. If you look at the quality of food in that neighborhood, in our neighborhoods, if you look at the quality of healthcare, and then the accessibility of certain resources is just lack thereof, and that's why you have this kind of jungle-like mentality, if you will, and that's not everyone, and that's not everywhere in South Central. I don't want to demonize the area, because it's not like that, but.
So, at the end of all of this, what are you hoping the play will accomplish?
So in the play, we talk a lot about gang violence. In the play, we talk a lot about police violence. And so what I'm really wanting to achieve by putting on this play and being a part of this play is not just to have the conversation about these things, because the conversation's been happening, but it's time to have action. And the only time things will actually change is when people start doing things. And so I'm hoping that we can see that this play written in 1994, about 1992, we're still dealing with such issues, in some aspects to a larger extent, in 2016.
Yeah.
So the conversation should kind of stop and the action should start. And I want the play to show the humanness of everyone, and us talking about Keith Watson. We're all trying to have this conversation. We're just coming at the same issue from different angles. So let's just talk.
Well, thank you so much for joining us
Absolutely,
today.
thank you for having me.
You can go see Twilight Los Angeles 1992 this Friday at 7 p.m. and Saturday at 2:30 p.m. at the Scene Doc Theater on campus. For a full schedule, go to dramaticarts.usc.edu.